KSGF.com. U.S. Senator Blunt with us. Thank you for being with us. Were your holidays good? Did you enjoy them?
Well, I did. I was home and got to watch, keep up with the blue and gold tournament, which I've paid attention to for a long time, and generally able to get to a few of those games. And surrounded by the common sense of Southwest Missouri, Nick, that's always a good thing.
How'd it feel? Be around all that common sense.
Pretty good, particularly based on where I work and who the leader is where I work. You know, we haven't brought the appropriations bills to the floor, deciding how to spend people's money any of the 3 years I've been in the Senate, or 4 years before that. So all the time that Harry Reid's been the majority leader, not one single time have we debated how we're going to spend people's money in the right way. Now, we were able to do that on a few of the bills, including one that I'm the principal Republican on, the Ag FDA bill and the defense bills, year before last, and that was a good thing. I'd like to see us almost as a demonstration project, and I told the leader this, the majority leader, Harry Reid, let's see what would happen if we actually did this the way it's supposed to be done. I said, I think you'd be surprised how much people would appreciate it and how much even the members of the Senate, many of whom have never seen this process work one time as either a House or Senate member, would know what would happen if you actually brought these bills to the floor, talked about what our priorities were, let anybody that wanted to make an amendment and suggest that those priorities should be different, make that amendment, and really do that in the most open, public possible way as the Constitution anticipated it would be done.
You know, you mentioned Harry Reid, and not all things are split along party lines. There's been this debate going on in terms of sanctions with Iran, and a lot of Democrats, Chuck Schumer being one, has really been pushing this. The White House has gone so far as to say that could even lead to war, that's an awful thing. We need not do it. I'm reading this morning that Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is preventing you all from voting on that, on those sanctions at the urging of President Obama. What's the latest, and kind of nutshell for people what this is about?
Well, you know, I'm one of the original sponsors of this legislation, which would just simply say that if the Iranians haven't done everything that they need to do to ensure that they won't be pursuing nuclear weapons in 6 months, we actually put more sanctions on them, not less sanctions on them. I heard just over the weekend the Secretary of State who I met with on this issue last week, and he understands my disagreement with where the administration is, thinks they now have an agreement, but very much says we're going to have to monitor this closely. You bet they are. I don't trust the Iranians on this issue. I think we had them in many ways right where they wanted them. The sanctions that I was part of putting on the Iranians several years ago had really begun to work, pressuring them on their economy. A nuclear Iran may be the most destabilizing thought that anybody could have about the future of the world, and we're going to have to watch this very closely, or I think the administration is likely to make a bad agreement that allows Iran to do just what North Korea has done for years now, which is make an agreement, promise they're not going to do something, and then in secret just keep right on doing it until they're more dangerous than they were before. If there's a lesson in North Korea, it's a lesson for Iran, which is don't trust people you shouldn't trust to not continue to do things that are dangerous to the future of the world. And Iran, a nuclear Iran is the most destabilizing thing possible. Israel becomes a big target. Europe becomes a hostage to a nuclear Iran that can get weapons in all likelihood from Iran to parts of Europe, and it's something we should be very concerned about. And as you said, it's very bipartisan. I think when we put this bill on the table, there were 13 Republicans. I was one of the original sponsors, and 13 Democrats, and that number's grown now to where a majority of the Senate wants to pass a bill that sends a message to Iran, but Harry Reid and the administration don't want that to happen.
Let's talk, I guess, just sort of get an overall update in your perspective when it comes to Obamacare. Since we last talked, I mean, you just go down the list of things that have happened that weren't supposed to happen, and we find out, I mean, it is almost remarkable how every thing, every benefit that was supposed to come from Obamacare. Instead, the opposite is occurring, from cost to availability to choices. And I think it was out of the state of Oregon, they had done a study when it came to lower income people having access to insurance. And one of the promises that we'd been told is that it would cut down on the number of people going to emergency rooms, because if people who didn't have insurance had insurance, then they wouldn't go to emergency rooms. And they found consistently lower income people who had insurance ended up going to the emergency room 40% more than people who didn't. So yet another thing, it's the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And of course, the numbers aren't hashing out. I mean, what is the sense with you all in Washington about this whole thing at this point?
Well, my sense is what it's always been, which is this just simply can't work. It's built on faulty principles. It can't work. And frankly, as much as I've not wanted to see Obamacare ever happen, the biggest enemy of Obamacare will be Obamacare. The president can say whatever he wants to say, and many people will believe him until you have to lay the facts on the table. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Nick. Whether it's if you like your insurance, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. People know that's not true anymore. They're about to figure out that insurance is not going to be cheaper for most people. It's going to be more expensive and less coverage. It's not going to be more coverage. It's going to be less coverage because you're going to have higher deductibles, and you may be paying for lots of coverage that you don't need. But in the old insurance system, you could shop for the insurance coverage you wanted. That's why I've always been a supporter of making that marketplace bigger, shopping across state lines, anything you could find that any regulator in the country had approved. If that met your needs, you could buy it no matter what state you lived in. This is a rolling disaster for the country. I think it may turn out to be the greatest opportunity ever to talk about what happens when the government tries to do things that people can better do for themselves. What the government could have done here are things I suggested in 2009 and before that and since then, which is increase the marketplace, increase competition, give people more choices, have fair tax treatment so that if you buy insurance on your own, you do that with the same untaxed dollars that the big company that gives you insurance at work buys insurance. There were a handful of things you could have done that would have made a huge difference. And I introduced a lot of that legislation in 2009. I don't think we had any bill. The most complicated thing we proposed was 70 pages. Some of the things you could do was 2 or 3 pages of legislation would have made a big difference of things like a greater marketplace. And now, as the administration is being forced to put their cards on the table, people are finding out that on virtually every promise, the promise is not what the president hoped it would be, I assume, and said it would be for sure.
Talking with U.S. Senator Blunt, final question, because I know we're running against time here. What do you think about the whole Christie thing? Of course, there's still, I suppose, some I ask, he's a governor. He's not in clearly the same body of government you are, but he's the guy that's constantly referenced as sort of a front runner already for the GOP nomination. There were reports this morning, CNN reporting that there's also a federal investigation involving him and misuse of Hurricane Sandy dollars for relief as part of the relief fund, using those to put himself in not in campaign ads, but in tourism ads instead of going with a cheaper bid that didn't have him in the ads, and whether anything comes of that or not. But it hadn't been a good week for Christie, and he's always had sort of this image of the straight up, shooting straight sort of guy, and this seems to damage that a bit. What's the sense and the talk amongst, in the Washington circle up there about that situation with Christie?
Well, I think not a lot of talk, as you suggested. He's a governor. He's a governor that none of us know very well. I had a chance to spend about an hour with him last year, and frankly, it was a much better hour than I thought it might be. He had a sense of humor and understanding of government that was pretty good. At the same time, this is one of those things that's kind of welcome to the big leagues. All the national media that you think is your friend. You get in a little bit of trouble as a potential presidential candidate, and I think the Christie. I'd be interested to know how the Christie bridge closing coverage compares to the national media coverage of Benghazi.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
They clearly are. He's a Republican. Now, he's a Republican that you and I might not agree with 100% of the time, but he's clearly a Republican. And suddenly, when he's a Republican who might be president, the time, the intensity, the focus, totally different than it was when he was, why couldn't more Republicans be like Chris Christie?
Yeah.
And we've heard that for a long time. I'm assuming the governor is being absolutely truthful here, which means he didn't have anything to do with this. And, the first lesson to learn in these kind of moments is, for whatever you do, get the truth out as quickly as you can. And if he did that, this is probably a great learning experience for him of how to deal with a national media that's not going to like you nearly as well as they did.
Yeah.
And, you were just being talked about as a guy who might be president.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to the so-called front runner. But we'll watch that. And I was thinking over the weekend, I said, man, the attention here, I wonder, I'd really like to know how much more time the national media spends talking about this than they did the tragedy in Benghazi that was suddenly not only a problem, but a big set of misinformation put out by both the Secretary of State and the President about what caused that and what happened. And, there's a place where we haven't yet been able to talk to all the people who were there, we being the country and the Senate and the House, people who were there who would have told you the next day when they were in Germany, the next day, they got them out of there, got them to Germany, they could have told you, well, there was no riot, there was no group that was upset about this video. It was people who came intending to kill Americans, and they did.
Yeah, and with the exception of a few, I'd say half the conversation, talking in terms of which was reported on more, even with that comparison, half of the reporting almost on the Benghazi was almost trying to explain it away or was pretty much characterizing it in a favorable way towards the administration. So,
Right.
You don't just have the volume of the content.
Based on what I know, I don't think there's a favorable explanation of what happened on
I agree.
bridge and the traffic congestion,
Yeah.
but what I'm interested in is the level of national media interest in this issue compared to so many others, and I think clearly it's because Chris Christie is a Republican governor who people think might
Without
be
a
real
doubt.
contender for the White House.
Without a doubt. Senator Blunt, appreciate it. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you.
All right.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care now.